I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing Shallow Sea, as well as its expansion, Nesting Season from Bad Comet Games. This is a 1 to 4 player tile laying game in which across 17 turns, players are going to be trying to optimize their score between their fish, their coral, and their sea life. Before we dive further into this channel is sponsored by Allplay, more about them at the end of the video. In Shallow Sea, as I mentioned already, you'll be taking 17 turns, and I'll dive into what the game is doing, then I'll tell you what the expansion adds, and then of course my thoughts and opinions, timestamps to everything down below. In those 17 turns, you're going to be drafting a fish as well as a matching tile. Matching meaning either the matching sea life or the matching coral above it. So one fish and one tile that you'll be placing onto your board. I'll walk through a few basic turns without too much regard for what is strategically optimal to show you how to play. For example, let's go ahead, and this one I do know that I want 4 different fish, and I do know I want to complete 4 sea life. I'm already trying to strategize. Let's not spend too much time on this. I'll draft this tile, place it on my board. I can place it anywhere, and then I'll take the fish from the same area, and I'll place this fish over here. The fish has to go around any tile that's currently on the board. That's a first turn, pretty straightforward. We'll take a new fish over here, and then we'll go ahead and take a new tile, placing it on the board. Now I'm playing this right now as if it were a standard multiplayer game, but I'm just going to take turns one after the other. Then it's my next turn. I can go ahead and take another thing. Now I do want to get a green fish and a yellow fish in play. There's not a green fish, but there is a yellow fish. So I could take this yellow fish over here. I'm going to place it there, and I'll also take this. This unfortunately doesn't pair perfectly, which does make me wonder how I want to achieve this. I could go down here. That feels not great either. Nope, that's not great. That's not great. Nope, nope. We're just going to go ahead and place this down like that. So I'm going to place that tile over here. Tiles have to in some way connect to any other tile, which means any of these spots would be a valid placement, and fish have to go on any tile, either the current one or a new one. So I'm working my way towards completing that. We're going to go ahead and draft tiles from this bag over here. Lucky that, we got a green fish, which was nice, and then over here we have another tile, and this is going to be turn 3. Now so far, I've only taken coral along with the fish, but you also want to pay attention to sea life. Sea life have specific requirements that are going to be how those tiles flip. Basically, you flip a coral when you have all of the various sides with a matching fish. Right now, for example, we have 2 of these sides, we don't yet have the third. The sea life have specific requirements instead. So for example, this one wants to have 2 coral of the same color in those relative spots. In this case, we're going to go ahead and try to take this one. I think this could be a good one for us. In fact, to the point that we're going to leave. Again, I'm trying to not optimize over here. Let's go ahead and grab this one. So I'm going to take this tile over here. This one might be helpful for us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this fish over here because I want to complete this tile. But then I'm going to take this one by spending one of my seashells. If I spend a seashell, I can take a mismatched tile. So for example, this tile I'm going to take and I'm going to place it over here. Now this particular tile wants to have different fish. This sea life over here is going to score based on different fish in the spots around it. So in any of the spots around it, if I have 4 different fish, it'll score and flip. Now it will score points as well, even if you got some fish and not all, but you get the most points and you get to flip it if you have 4 different fish in the surrounding tiles, which I'm going to work my way towards. I'm going to start by going ahead and flipping this. Because I now have done all 3 of these, we have yellow, orange, and green, I'm going to flip the coral and I'll be getting these 7 points on it, and I have to choose one of those fish to place onto it, which will no longer count on my board, but it will count towards the coral, and this now has 1 fish over here. I need 4 different colors of fish on these surrounding areas, and that's how that will score. So now you've seen how you can take a sea life tile. You've also seen me take mismatched tiles from the game board. There's a few other things you can do in this game. First of all, you can wipe any row of either fish or either of the tile types by discarding a seashell. Secondly, when you flip a tile, whether a coral or a sea life, you're going to go ahead and gain a seashell back. So for example, that seashell I spent, I would get it right back because I had finished this tile over here. You're going to be drafting a total of 17 tiles. Across those drafts, you're trying to fulfill multiple things. You are first of all trying to fulfill the various coral. You are also trying to fulfill the various sea life, and then you're trying to achieve these goals from the base game. We'll talk about this, which is the expansion, shortly. The base game is going to have you taking 1 orange and 1 blue card. Those are going to be general goals that are in play for all players, each one giving you a different thing that's happening. For example, the colossal coral reef is going to give you 2 points for your largest section of completed coral on the board. It effectively incentivizes you to make sure that your coral are all touching one another because you'll get a bunch of extra points if they are. Meanwhile, the upstairs neighbor, which actually does pair a little nicely with this, for every single column on the board, each of these columns, if you have 2 sea life or 2 coral in the column, then you're going to get 3 points for that column. Effectively, you're incentivized to make sure you have at least 2 completed sea life or at least 2 completed coral in the same column. For example, if I put a coral here, then this column has a sea life and a coral, and therefore it wouldn't score. So you are trying to group up how you place your tiles to optimize the scoring. And then lastly, at the end of the game, you're going to score for a few different things. For example, uncompleted fish are going to score for completed coral around them. So a fish that's on the board that was not placed onto a coral is going to look at all the completed coral around them and score points. You're also going to get 2 points for each different sea life you've completed. That incentivizes diversity, because otherwise sometimes you can do things like this, where you place this tile over here, which wants 3 completed coral of the same type in these grids, and you can place this tile over here, which rewards 3 completed coral of the same type, and you can double up sometimes on the same tiles if you are trying to maximize the way those placed. The game balances that by incentivizing you with 2 bonus points per different type of sea life to try to encourage diversity. Lastly, you can spend 2 seashells to move a fish anywhere on the board. That could often be helpful towards completing various goals, especially with fish that are otherwise stuck and only scoring you endgame points, as opposed to helping you for bigger chunks of in-game points. That's the general idea of the base game. The expansion adds a few things, but the main thing it's going to add is going to be this board over here. This board is going to change the way you score, so instead of having a blue and an orange card, instead you'll just take 1 random card, and it's going to be 1 card in play instead. But in addition to that, you are going to have this nesting season board, which is going to give you different goals that you're working towards, and turtles that you can place out as you achieve those goals if you're first, second, or third in completing the various goals that the game gives you. And again, these are variable, so you can have 1 of each. There's 15 total goals. You're going to have 1 of each of the colors. This one, for example, wants you to have 4 adjacent coral in a diagonal pattern on the board, building that out. This one wants 4 different fish, and this one wants 4 completed sea life tiles. They're going to give you 15 different goals. You'll choose 3 in each game, and those are going to give you different things along with the card to work your way towards. That's the big element of the expansion. In addition to that, the expansion is going to add a few new things. It adds a few new cards to the game, so you have more of those. It adds different scoring tiles, because in every game, one thing I didn't talk about is you have trays and trays. Between the expansion and the base game, you're going to have 3 full trays of different tiles. You only choose 10 of these every game to go ahead and play with, which adds a large degree of diversity to your playing experience in terms of the different ways those tiles score. You're also going to add new tiles for the coral over here. These are going to be wild. White is wild. It's fulfilled by anything, but it gives you a few less points on those tiles. That's going to be the main things that the expansion adds. That's basically how you play through a game of Shallow Sea. There's also a ton of scenario-driven goals. Let me go ahead and show you in like the expansion and, well, the base game and the expansion, because this game takes a very Cascadia-like approach, for better and for worse, which we'll talk about. But it gives you a very Cascadia-like approach of a ton of various achievements you can play through, either multiplayer or solo, different things you can do. For example, the solo mode is going to have you saying, okay, if we're playing on this one, we're dealing with those 8 sea life tiles, those 10 sea life tiles, these goals, as well as the specific thing we're trying to do in addition to that, and a point scoring minimum. These give you a lot of fun things to do in solo mode, and the expansion, the nesting season, further expands upon that, this time with the nesting season board, including times sometimes where you're playing with both cards and the nesting season board. Just a ton of variability to the solo experience. With that, let's go ahead and dive into my review of what I like, don't like, and see others not liking, and all of that. In general, and I've said this in a bunch of recent videos, I think there's been Ghosts Galore, there's been, oh my gosh, there's been, what was the game, I'm blanking on it. The Wispwood. There's been a bunch of these tile laying games recently, and I love tile laying games. I am a sucker for tile laying games that give you specifically tile laying with point scoring optimization. Like, here's a bunch of things to do, and here's different ways to try to configure your scoring to optimize your score. So I am coming in as very much the target audience for this kind of game. So I'll start by saying I like this game, but I am primed to like this kind of game. I don't ever dislike this kind of game. The only question is, how much do I like these kinds of games? So let's start with that. This is one of my favorite genres. But past that, outside of the basic idea that this is my favorite genre, one of my favorite genres, in general, there's so many different things to consider with every single placement, and while this game seems simple at first, trying to make it all work is very much far from simple. As you place tiles into your board, even the cascading nature of the way the fish score, and the way you'll get fish locked into regions, and you're trying to optimize around coral placement, as well as trying to get those sea life tiles, finding that perfect balance of how to optimize, because if you just go for coral, you don't have enough fish to get everything done. If you just go for sea life, life, you don't have enough fish to complete all the tiles you need. You really need to go for a nice blend of those two aspects while balancing that with the nesting season or the cards, depending on what you're playing with, as well as the general goals on those sea life tiles as you put down everything onto your board. And so there's a lot of challenge to make it all work and to mentally configure it and just to optimize your score. You won't be finishing your board, which is a small thing I don't like, but you won't be finishing your full board. You'll be playing 17 tiles on this 21 tile board and trying to get everything done with only 17 fish while trying to get those scores and eclipse your opponents in the game. It is very, very hard to maximize perfectly, and that fact that you don't feel you can get a perfect game is one of the things that makes me want to keep diving back into it, because every game I'm like, oh, I can play just a little bit better this time. I can just get a little bit more efficiency on those fish as I draft things. I can choose those perfect times to cash in my seashells to get the tiles I need, to get those mismatched tiles, and to make my whole board pretty, and of course scoring a ton of points. And the expansion smoothly integrates into the base game. So smoothly, in fact, that I hesitate to call it a full expansion. It feels like a modular set of extra stuff, because the nesting season board is the only real thing. Other than that, you have like different tiles. This feels like a very mini expansion, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it smoothly integrates. Doesn't necessarily add a ton to the way I feel about the game, but it is a welcome set of extras. Although I will say, I do personally enjoy playing with both of these cards, as opposed to playing with just one of them. So for me, my personal way I play this right now is, again, if I'm playing a multiplayer, I should say, because if you're playing with the scenario goals, then obviously you're screwing the results. But if you're playing with multiplayer with friends, I like playing with a blue, an orange, and the full nesting season board overall. So all this flows naturally into the base game experience, making it very easy to incorporate. Maybe not your first game, but every subsequent game, you can incorporate whatever expansion elements you want. In general, the seashells, they give you a lot of flexibility, but you have to earn them. So at first, it takes a few turns to start building your way towards earning those seashells back, but as you start earning those back and building out your board, these give you the perfect amount of a give and take, especially to account for the way the game won't work out for you, whether that's the tiles on the board, wiping tiles, taking mismatched tiles, or moving those fish around the board, which costs an expensive 2 seashells, but can get a lot done and can really maximize how much you can do with those 17 fish across the course of the game. The variable sea life tiles over here, that keeps things fresh. Of course, the goals as well, the nesting season goals, the card goals, all those things combined give it a degree of freshness to the experience that every time you play, again, with all the tiles you have over here, how many tiles? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 14, 14, 50, 42? Is that 42 different tiles over there? I think it's 42 different tiles, of which you're only using 10 every game. That's a lot of flexibility to the experience. And of course, the solo mode. This is exactly my kind of solo mode. I love solo modes that give you not just beat a score, but hey, here's a target score, here's a bunch of criteria, here's the things you're playing with, now make it all work. And I like that in games. I've only played the solo a few times in this one. I do want to dive into a bit more, so I don't yet have a strong opinion on the difficulty. I will say I like it, a difficult solo mode, and so far the ones I've played, I have been able to achieve without too much sweat, but I've only played the first few, so I'm holding out a little bit of a final opinion on the solo, but I am enjoying the challenge of it so far. I just needed to level up a little bit in difficulty, but we'll get there. Hopefully we'll get there. Anyways, that's as far as what I like in the game. As far as what I don't like in the game, two things, only two things. Number one, it's much longer than you'd expect, at least for myself or my group, I should say. This game is coming in, where does the box say? The box says, doesn't say over here, does it say on the bottom of this box? It's bound to say on the back of the box. The box says it is it's gotta say it somewhere, 30 to 45 minute game. I do not play this in 30 to 45 minutes. My group does not play this in 30 to 45 minutes. My group plays this in easily an hour plus. And when I say an hour plus, I think it's generally 80 to 90 minutes a game for us. And you might be sitting there thinking, wow, why is it taking you so long? Or alternatively, you might be thinking, yes, that's our experience too. I don't know which group. In fact, if you've played this game, let me know in the comments down below. Which category do you fall into? Are you in the 30 to 45 minutes per game? Or are you in the 90 minutes per game? Something about this game does trigger a lot of AP, and I don't mind that AP because I'm enjoying the experience, but I do find it is a slightly slower game for this genre of game. At least that's been my experience so far. We are enjoying ourselves the whole way through, but we are taking our time trying to optimize and make it all work, for better or for worse. The other thing I'll say is, as much as I love Cascadia, I am dinging this game a little bit. It feels like they really took Cascadia and try to make it different. Meaning, there's being inspired by other things, and there's times where you look at a system. A good example is Cascadia versus Harmonies. Cascadia versus Harmonies, when you look at those two on the surface, they're games that definitely feel similarly inspired, but there's no single element where I can say they just took Cascadia and made it into Harmonies. as much as I do like Shallow Sea, and I do like Shallow Sea, there's way too many elements where they said, hey, let's take a look at what Cascadia did well, and just make our own version of Cascadia. That's evident in the tile drafting system, in the way you can spend things to take mismatched tiles, in the way you can spend things to clear out the rows, in the way that all the tile placement and those animals together are going to be a big factor. That one's less obviously on the nose. That would be great on its own. In the entire scenario scoring structure and the way they do that in the rulebook, which I'm torn on because I love it in Cascadia and I'm happy to see it in another game. So I'm torn on the fact that I do like Cascadia, and so another Cascadia adjacent game is a good thing for me, versus that sometimes is that fine line between inspired and clearly copying, and this one feels like this feels a little bit too much like they blend into that clearly copying, and so it does get a small strike for that. As far as I can see others not liking the game, it's hard to remember everything you're trying to do. As you're trying to build out your board, you have plans and you start placing down tiles, and then suddenly before you know it, you're 2 turns deep, well 2 turns past what you messed up, and you're like, wait a second, I was trying to place a coral there. I needed a green coral there. What am I doing? It is very easy to lose track of what you're trying to do in this game because there's so many things that you're mentally trying to juggle as you play through. There's lots of desire to take back moves because of that, or to adjust them on a second thought as you try to figure out, okay, great, hey guys, 2 turns ago I placed this oriented that way, can I adjust it? You have that aspect in the game. I do recommend playing with a flexible group that's kind of like, hey, you do you, have fun, we're all here to enjoy ourselves, obviously without messing things up, but like, there is that kind of, again, there's so much going on here, it's very easy to mess up, it's very easy to want to take things back, and spatially it can be a challenging experience. Something about the way tiles, there's one tile type I specifically find, it's not really on the board, but there's one of these that has like 3 around the corner, and I find players are constantly messing up how it orients, at least until they're a few plays deep. There's small spatial things about this entire board that can make it a slightly obtuse element to figure out as you play. As far as final thoughts on Shallow Sea, I love this game. I really genuinely do. It's such a good experience. It's exactly the kind of game I enjoy. I'm coming in at a 4.5 out of 5. I could see that bumping up. It depends. I'm a little hesitant because, again, that Cascadia element feels a little bit too on the nose, but like, ultimately, if I enjoy the game enough, and I do enjoy the game enough, there are some small weird things. Going to the nesting season. I didn't talk about the nesting season expansion. Let me go ahead and do that. The nesting season, like I said already, it adds the nesting season board, a few other things. One specific element is I do find this board, they made some interesting choices that I don't necessarily agree with. Number one is you only have 2 turtles. I get it, I guess. I would rather have just had 3 turtles and just go for all 3 boards. But also, like, these variable scoring tiles, they are so minimally different. It could have just had your own system. I don't feel those are such minimally different in their scoring variability that having tiles as opposed to a pre-printed board, that felt like a choice that I understand where it came from, but it felt like a miss overall. Small notes over there. But overall, the gaming experience, I really enjoy this. My biggest concern I guess, is whether the solo mode difficulty will pan out, but I'm enjoying it enough even as it is. I like kind of, again, setting up and going for different criteria, and I am decent at this game. I like these kind of experiences. So I'm coming in at a 4.5. I really like it. I find it very satisfying. It feels similar and yet different at the same time. For large elements of the game are different. There's just large elements of the game that feel copied from Cascadia. I enjoy it. This is Shallow Sea from Bad Comic Games. As far as other game recommendations, definitely check out Wondrous Creatures if you want to check out other games from Bad Comic Games that I thoroughly enjoy. I think Wondrous Creatures is a lot of fun, lots of card comboing that can be incredibly satisfying. And then I mentioned Cascadia. Check out Cascadia or Cascadia Alpine Lakes if you want another version that builds up. Both of them phenomenal games. I love the Cascadia system, and again, conflicted thoughts on how this implements that. As far as Allplay, I mentioned Allplay is a channel sponsor. If you go to allplay.com, you can check out a variety of games, both from Allplay as well as from their partner publishers, and you can get them all for $4 flat rate shipping if you are in the US for any number of different games on the site. Check out Keystone North America. I think Keystone North America is a very challenging nature-themed game of trying to optimize your board that personally I find incredibly satisfying, and if you like these kinds of games, I think you will too. In any case, until next time, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co. Hope you found this video helpful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.